Hello, my name is Justin Decloux. I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
and you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we return to a subject that has been begging for us to talk about him again, Ingmar Bergman.
Nobody has ever talked about Ingmar Bergman.
Never.
And so we are filling the void.
So we're going to have to change how we do this podcast. Today, we'll be talking about Ingmar Bergman and his film. Because that's how people, he's a very serious filmmaker that you don't usually hear people talk about it. It's like, hey, we're talking about Ingmar Bergman.
You don't hear two dumb bozos.
We're going to bring sound effects to this podcast.
So Ingmar Bergman is one of the first directors we talked about on this podcast.
Yep.
We did an episode a very, very long time ago where we had our old friend Dan Berube come on, who guided us through, what did we talk about? We talked about The Seventh Seal probably and
Serpent's
Egg.
Yep.
And I haven't gone back to listen. You know what, actually? I did a Michael and Us episode on The Serpent's Egg like years after that, and I went back and listened to our episode then. And it was really interesting because I completely forgot what I said. I had the exact same take on the movie, except I was dumber and delivered it more poorly years earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm excited also.
But were you maybe a little bit more succinct in
Possibly.
the Important Cinema Club episode?
I was just like, yeah, I didn't like it that much.
Yeah, exactly. I like that scene where David Carradine jumped from really high. It's like a stunt from a Hong Kong movie.
We had a little riff about the scene where you see his balls between his legs.
That's what you want from the Balls in Bergman episode. Yeah. Ingmar Bergman, look.
He's good.
Yeah, he's
good, folks.
Like,
Cries and Whispers, The Seventh Seal.
His movies are boring. No, they're not.
They're not boring.
They can be funny. They're visually inventive.
And shattering at times, emotional experiences.
So on that note, we picked the ones people consider the worst. Now, I know that other listeners are writing in. They're like, well, you didn't actually pick the worst ones. His early films, yeah, those are boring. We don't want to talk about
We didn't want to talk about pre-Smiles of a Summer Night, and we also didn't want to talk about The Serpent's Egg again.
No.
I get The Serpent's Egg.
Yep, I got it.
So we talked about 3 movies that are considered either misfires or just lesser. And hopefully, in talking about these movies, we will be able to illuminate something of what is great about him, in addition to the moments when...
That's what he needs. He's in the shadows and he just a little light shown on him.
One thing I remember about that first episode we did a really long time ago is I feel like I was really fixated when we talked about him on really one facet of his interests, which was like the silence of God, the death of God. And it's funny because I'm not saying that isn't in these movies, but I'm much more conscious of all the other things that these movies are about. These movies, as well as, some of his greater films, I think are, among other things, they're about surfaces, placid surfaces, seeming normality, and everything that is roiling beneath those surfaces. There are also films that, not only was God dead in the 50s and 60s when Bergman first started becoming popular, but psychiatry was ascendant. There was much more thought about trauma, and Sigmund Freud was very fashionable at that time. Both these films and some of his greater films are preoccupied with that thin line between normalcy and chaos. You can see that in Scenes from a Marriage, where after the first 40 minutes of the movie, where it's this seemingly normal middle class marriage, and then all of a sudden the hammer drops, like, oh, by the way, I'm having an affair and I'm leaving the family right now. You can see it in, Persona, these two characters who are maybe two halves of the same self. You see that all through these movies, and it's a troubling thing that I found resonant even in some of the bad movies.
Even in All These Women?
Not in All These Women, which I think by a huge margin is the worst of the 3 movies we watched.
Now, All These Women is interesting when you hear that Bergman doing a full comedy. And this is the thing about Bergman, is that he's always been a funny guy. You watch The Seventh Seal, Max von Sydow having conversation with his death. It's funny. There's funny lines in that.
I mean, it's amazing. There are so many filmmakers who have scenes in their movies, whose movies are very funny. And then when they make a full-on comedy, it's horrible.
Yes.
I'm thinking of
Steven Spielberg,
1941, or Roman Polanski's like that too. Mm-hmm. Like his movies are very funny, except when he makes what?
I think I just saw his last film, which was a barrel of laughs.
The Palace?
The Palace, that's right.
There are 1 or 2 laughs in that.
Well, maybe it's just because they are so skilled at the dramatic elements and drawing you in that when you do a little comedic swerve, you don't need very much to garner. It's that the classic pressure release valve,
Absolutely.
if you will.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
when it's all release.
one of the films we saw, what is the difference between laughing and crying, right? Like, there's no line there. Anyway, all these women, notable, Bergman's first color film.
That's right. And that's the fact.
Yep.
Everyone knows
Hold
the
on
fact.
to it.
Because
That's it.
I first became aware of this movie because in the book, The 50 Worst Films of All Time by the Medveds, it's not in the book, but
Okay.
at the end of the book, they polled like several prominent critics. And one of them was Roger Ebert. And he had,
He
his
famously hated this movie.
his 5 worst movies, and this is one of them. And he said, how can it be that one of the greatest directors made one of the worst comedies? I wouldn't call it one of the worst comedies.
I wouldn't call it the worst comedies, just from the visual construction, there's always something to look at in this film.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm watching this movie, and I actually think it has a bit of 1941 syndrome, where it's like, wow, I find so much of this movie pleasurable, and I'm not laughing. And does it need to make me laugh?
What he's trying to do is a Richard Lester-esque comedy, which is like asides, humorous title cards, but where Richard Lester has a zany Looney Tune style pace. Hate to break it to you, that ain't the mode that Bergman's working in.
I was definitely, for the first 10 or 15 minutes of this movie, thinking, okay, hey, this isn't so bad. I'm going to enjoy this. And as it goes along, it just becomes such a trudge.
Yeah, so like you start in a very like proscenium, there's a funeral,
A very stylized tableau.
yeah, and like women come up to the coffin, and then it jumps back in time on a title card.
4 days earlier.
4 days earlier. And we're finally going to learn how this person, unseen in this opening funeral, passed away.
Right. So the person allegedly in the coffin, spoiler, is Felix, a great cellist. And when we go back 4 days earlier, his biographer, Cornelius, comes to visit him at his palatial summer estate. He's writing this biography. He wants an interview.
But he can't get hold of him.
And neither can we as the audience. We never really see
It's
Felix.
like waiting for Godot, if you will.
Now, Cornelius, who is a biographer and critic, is a buffoon. He's pompous. He has a monocle. He has this ridiculous obsession with every detail of the great musician's life. Like, he wants to own him. He wants to be him in some way.
This is one of those things that when there's comedic scenes that happen in this movie, and they're very base in their construction, like, oh no, he bumps up against a statue. Oh, we're going to hold on it as he tries to put it back, but it's going to fall. And it's just not funny. The only way that you will laugh at this movie is laughing at the fact that it's not funny.
That's right.
And like, then you're playing 4D chess with this movie where you're like, is this what he was trying to do? The fact that this comedic setup and payoff is not making me laugh is the joke. Hence, I'm laughing now.
I mean,
you gotta jump through a lot of hoops for that.
but yeah, as the movie goes on, it follows this biographer critic, Cornelius, as he's wandering around this manor. He's ping-ponging between Felix's many mistresses, all these women of the title. And his experience sort of parallels the audience's in that we never really get to the great musician either. I think Cornelius as a character does not ground the movie very well.
No.
Because like something that's funny about Bergman is he was apparently obsessed with his critics.
Really?
Yeah, like there were, he had his detractors in the critical community in Sweden, and he hated them.
The thing about Bergman is when you read about him, not only is he not a very nice man,
No.
he did a lot of that stuff, he had the thinnest skin in the world.
An incredibly petty man, and including like The Magician is also a parable about him dealing with his critics, because the magician in that movie, he's sort of like, oh, you think I'm a fraud? Well, maybe I am a fraud. Maybe I'm a magician. What does that mean?
Well, there's that famous story, right, that defines his life when, the government showed up for tax-related reasons. He's like, well, I'm going to leave and I'm not coming back. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right.
and it's amazing that he was this sensitive, given that he's Ingmar Bergman.
Maybe he is that sensitive because his movies do have so much emotion over what appears to be a very pallid complexion.
Man, you got it.
I know.
You should teach
Put that
cinema
on the
studies
box.
somewhere. But yeah, this is him getting back at critics, and as an attack on critics, I think it's pretty lame. It's the
Yeah.
most like, oh, they're just jealous. They just want to be me.
They want to sleep with the women that I know. A lot of very, let's say, conventionally pretty actors in this movie.
Many of whom were former lovers of Mr. Bergman himself.
Yep.
So what's he complaining about?
Yeah. Well, when you have everything, you got to
Yeah.
complain about what you don't have.
So like as an attack on critics, it's sort of like the things that everybody
So
already
funny.
knows.
He's like one of the most famous directors in his
One of the
lifetime.
most, beloved, like the guy,
Yeah.
the international art house
And
guy.
some like hack critic in maybe the island of 685 people that he lived on.
Hey, you know what? I can identify with this. Somebody comments on one of our podcasts
Man.
like, I hate these guys.
Did Bergman live long enough to be on social media or be like replying on the IMDb forums?
Why do they think my movies are boring?
I'll show them.
Why does Nolan fan 69 hate me so much?
So this movie, again, there is a few moments here or there.
Well, the movie looks great.
Yeah, it looks great.
And how about that fireworks scene?
Well,
It's like the
fireworks scene-
boxer's omen.
Yeah, is very fun. And there's a title card that comes up. These title cards in this movie just stink of like desperation at the last minute of being like, we need to wacky it up. During the fireworks scene, a title card comes up that's like, do not read any symbolism into these fireworks.
Yeah. And I
Gotcha.
And I think he hates this central character, Cornelius, too much to give us a kind of emotional investment in him at all. It's like just watching all these like beautiful tableaus with
Very disconnected as well. All
Yeah.
the scenes running into each other.
Yeah, so it's 80 minutes and it becomes quite a trudge by the end of it. Mm-hmm. Why don't we move on to, I think, a more interesting movie?
Yeah, I agree.
1971's The Touch. Now, just as All These Women is his first color film, this is his first English language film. One of two, along with The Serpent's Egg. There's more than one version of the film. There's one that has more English dialogue, like the scenes of B.B. Anderson and Max von Sydow are in English. Some of the music is a little bit different.
It doesn't matter how you cut this film. It has one main issue at the center of it, and that's Mr. Elliot Gould.
Well, yeah, like The Serpent's Egg, these are the only two ones where he casts, a big American actor to join his repertory company. I don't know. I'm affectionate towards Elliot Gould.
I love
in this
Elliot
movie
Gould.
a little, a little bit. Like his presence is so unusual in this film.
Yes. So let's give the plot of the film, because you can understand mathematically why you would make the decision of casting him in this role that you do.
Absolutely.
But there's a central conceit to bring the audience in that is missing from it, which is charm.
Absolutely. And I think the issues this movie raises are resonant. I think it's quite moving at times. It also suffers a little bit from that foreign director making an English movie problem where all of the dialogue is like is the marriage not a happy one? It's this Google Translate quality to it, like My Blueberry Nights.
So the film starts with B.B. Anderson arriving to find her mother has passed away. Classic Bergman shtick. She arrives at the hospital room and she looks around the room at all the items that reminded her of her mother. The audience is hooting and hollering. We're like, yeah, that's art house shit.
Which, by the way, whenever we do one of these the bad films of a great filmmaker episodes, one of the things that often happens is the things that are so powerful in their best movies
become satirical.
Yeah, they become shtick or self-parody.
Well, that's the other movie too was lowered when it came out because people felt it was falling into that self-parody hole.
And I think we're going to talk about that with the other movie we watched too.
But so The Touch involves that she meets Elliot Gould at the hospital after her mother passed away, and then it jumps at their besties.
That's right. So Elliot Gould is the patient of her husband, Max von Sydow, and the two of them have a very comfortable, upper middle class marriage that has no passion in it anymore, no sex. And she is 34 years old and feeling on the older side of 34. She feels...
She does not look 34 years old.
Well, she...
Listen, the 70s were a rougher time.
Well, she feels not desired by her husband. The passion has gone out of their relationship. And her husband is very bourgeois and orderly.
Can you imagine Max von Sydow was like, I am also 34. And I was like, no, that cannot be true.
He might have been 34, honestly.
No, he was not.
He was alive pretty late.
Yeah, he was.
Max von Sydow was great because, and many people have observed this, it's in The Exorcist, he's already playing a 60-year-old man.
Yeah, they aged him up in that picture.
Yeah. She starts this affair with Elliot Gould, who's this much more fiery tempered, much more passionate foreign man.
And it's very playful. She's very direct with him. She's like, listen, before we have sex, let me just describe myself. Why am I in this situation and my body?
Why I'm so undesirable. Yeah. And he does find her desirable.
And the thing about Elliot Gould in this film is right away, they have sex for the first time, and then he is as abusive as he'll be in the movie, basically in the next scene.
And, he is...
And by that I mean that he's physically abusive, and he sexually assaults her. And then the movie goes from there as they continue that relationship.
And I mean, as you can tell, a lot of the movie is about this love triangle where on the one hand, there's this incredibly passionate relationship that's also abusive and harmful, but that like makes her feel something. And then there's Max von Sydow that is comfortable and loving in a lot of ways, but makes her feel nothing.
And the failure of this film is that, like a friend that you know, you're like, why are they together? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry between the two of them.
It's not there.
Yeah, it isn't there. It doesn't communicate it.
I would like to see a naked picture of your wife.
Yeah, that's so funny. I don't know what to do with all these churned up feelings. You know, the two of them.
What if the Swedish critics are like, oh, Bergman, terrible dialogue.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. I mean,
on the nose.
it's funny because the Woody Allen dramatic movies that are like Bergman imitations have this exact same problem where everybody talks like subtitles. So who knows? Maybe in Sweden they have a different view.
Bergman's like, I'm pulling a fast one on all my international viewers.
But you're right that mathematically, you know, conceptually, Elliot Gould's casting is interesting because he's playing this member of the Jewish diaspora. You know, he's a Holocaust survivor in his childhood. He lived in Israel for a time as a young man, and now he's basically a man without a country. And that feeling that's churning him up inside, that feeling of rootlessness, is very much at the core of his pain.
But you need at least one or two moments where you would understand why they would be together.
Yes.
And you never get that in this.
You know, can I tell a personal story with this movie?
Yeah.
I saw this movie at, I want to say in like 2012 at Lincoln Center with Elliot Gould himself in attendance. And he was being interviewed on stage by the Safdie brothers, who were not yet famous.
Yep.
And it was part of this retrospective of like the new Jewish masculinity in film, like in the 70s. You know, and the interview went horribly because they were interested in this character as like exemplifying this new Jewish masculinity. And like, he's handsome in the movie. There are scenes where he's got his shirt off and he's really hairy. And Elliot Gould could not understand this at all. He was like, wait, you admire this man, this guy in that movie? He's terrible. And they kept being like, yeah, but he's masculine. You know, he's like a new kind of Jew in the film. And it went so horribly, the audience almost like revolted. Like they almost did a mutiny. And so like, then they just switched to questions about like, oh, okay, what was it like to work with Ingmar Bergman?
Now, how would this movie have worked if they, you know, had cast as Bergman wanted, or maybe it was a studio, someone like Robert Redford?
Well, it would have been a completely different film.
Or even someone like John Cassavetes.
Yeah, maybe.
Who you could understand, because John Cassavetes does have that edge that like, it doesn't feel like an act when he would go bad. And you could feel that he could pull it back from there as well.
Yeah, that might work. I mean, the problem with Robert Redford is like, he's not an other.
No, that's right. Yeah. And I think that's important within the construct of the entire film, because you have this character who keeps going back to him after, like, he hits her, he's just controlling. And in the moments of calm when they're bonding, you're like, nah, this guy sucks still.
By the way, I think the Safdies had a point in the sense that, like, the character is supposed to be attractive.
Yeah.
He's supposed
but it doesn't work within the context of the movie.
Yeah. But I liked this movie, I have to say, overall. I found it, you didn't. Okay.
Nah, I thought it was fine.
Okay.
I appreciated what it was trying to do. Bergman saying stuff like, yes, my first love story. He knows what he's saying about that in the way that it is so manipulative and difficult, in a way that you never seen these kind of stories portrayed on screen. But I just want to understand. And I think the casting of Elliot Gould puts up those barriers. And, you know, again, if it was differently cast, I think if it would have been the same movie, I may have reacted emotionally different to it.
Yeah. So Face to Face from 1976, one of the later ones.
And this is one that when it came out, people were like, no, Bergman, you know, he's past his prime, just doing the same old thing.
And I mean, he made Fanny and Alexander after this, which is one of his best films, but it was definitely in that, you know, I guess it stuck out in a certain run of films. I mean, he did so much of his best movies around here. Cries and Whispers, Autumn Sonata, Fanny and Alexander, and then there's this one.
Maybe because it's coming after all of those, and it's dealing in not exactly the same, but in similar stuff.
It's also, I think, a bit of a throwback to some of the 60s stuff that's very dreamlike and has a lot of really heavy, overt symbolism.
Wild Strawberries,
or
even
like
Hour of the
Wolf. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the reason that this film works way better than anybody would lead you to believe is Liv Ullmann in that central character.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say?
I mean, it rests completely on her shoulders in the same way that, like, Elliot Gould kind of sinks the touch. He doesn't have the touch in that movie. That's my, I'm putting that up as my big banner at the top.
Oh, yeah. Gene Shalit.
Yeah, that's right. Gene Shalit is still alive.
Oh, my. We should have him on the pod.
I think he may be 98 years old or
Well,
something
if
like
he can
that.
still talk, we should have him on the pod.
Is Rex Reed still around?
Yes, he is.
Oh my God. Round table. Gene Shalit, Rex Reed.
We already had Michael Medved on. I mean why not?
We got to get them out before they go out the door. I can understand them watching this movie and being like, oh, this feels like warmed over leftovers. But you watch it now, separated from all that, and it feels so immediate and in your face. And one of those like textbook, oh, this is the degradation of a mind on screen in a way that you understand. It doesn't feel operatic or over the top. Like you can associate, oh, this is how someone kind of, they start to, leave in the way that you know them.
Absolutely. And I mean, I like this movie too. I'm kind of surprised it has such a bad reputation. I mean, maybe just in that run,
you trusted Woody Allen too much when he said this one was a misfire.
Woody Allen did say in his introduction to Bergman's autobiography that, even his rare misfires like Face to Face are interesting.
And I do think that like that weighed on Bergman in the same way that we've talked about that he didn't really take criticism very well, that he was very down on it for a long time until years later he rewatched it and he was basically like, that's good. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, so Liv Ullmann plays this psychiatrist who's working at a mental institution, and she's treating all of these patients, including one in particular who is almost like, she's almost like this like mirror self, face to face, if you will. You've seen the poster.
Yeah.
She herself had a traumatic childhood, but has basically moved into or transitioned into again, placid, normal adulthood with her husband. And when her husband goes off to the country, she moves in with her parents who are old in this house. And being in this house triggers all sorts of memories, as is this new relationship she strikes up, this affair that she has with this other lover. There's also this early scene where it's a rape scene, folks. And I kind of like couldn't believe it. It's so not only is the content of it so horrible, but the way Bergman shoots it.
Well, he does it atypical to his style, which is the camera's very far back and it plays off screen in the corner.
That's right.
You don't really see anything.
You see somebody's legs, and then you hear the sound of it, and then you see the guy get up and say something.
It is a
it's
scene
like
of
surveillance footage,
sexual assault. But one of the defining parts of that scene is that there's no penetration in it because the rapist is like, "Oh, I can't get in; it's too tight," and that weighs on Liv Ullmann throughout the rest of the movie.
And there's this really powerful scene shortly afterward where she's in bed with her lover.
I mean, the defining scene of the movie,
right? And she starts doing this monologue that begins very softly and then ends with her in complete hysteria, where she basically says words to the effect of like, I feel so repressed, I feel so inside myself that I wish he had been able to accomplish
it. That I feel no pleasure, no pain, I feel nothing. And then she breaks down laughing, which turns to crying, and this is all done in one take. Very like staged like. And the camera's not, when I say one take, I'm not like, and the camera's swooping up, coming into a close-up. It's very matter of fact. She like gets up, she goes to a chair, she's like, okay, I'm good, call a taxi, I don't want you to drive me home. She breaks down again. And what ends up happening is that the second half of the movie, which is the one that critics seem to have the most problem with, and Bergman himself was kind of like, I like the first part, but the second part, I didn't really nail it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works well enough.
I think it works.
It's this, dissolution into like a dream world. Again, the symbolism is very heavy and overt.
She's at her own funeral, and she's being cremated.
But I don't know, it worked on me.
You just put a close-up of Liv Ullmann's face, and that's like, you just sell it. That's Bergman's like, I know how to do this. What's interesting about this one as well is that kind of label you can give it of its self-parody could also be related that this was a film that was produced by Dino De Laurentiis and also distributed by Paramount. So it seemed to have a more like Hollywood style feel. So you can sense that people at the time were reading into it as like, oh, he's just giving us what we want, like stuff that we've done before on a bigger canvas.
I mean, these cycles of backlash hit filmmakers at times. Like there was a trailer this week for Wes Anderson's new movie, and I saw
there cannot be backlash.
Well, I saw a lot of people saying things like, oh, his movies are like AI generated at this point. It's the same thing over and over again. And I don't know, like, to be honest, I feel that way sometimes with Wes Anderson.
But he does what he likes.
And also maybe like 20 years from now, we'll look at some of these movies removed from that cycle of them coming out, and they'll seem wholly different.
I don't need to jump on the grenade to defend Wes Anderson because I think it's pretty obvious that but what he's doing within the stylistic confines that he loves are always different in every movie.
That's right.
So it's like, that is just a very light reading of his films, in the same way that I think you can make a very broad reading of Bergman's movies, of like, they're all the same, right? They're kind of like slow and long and filled with empty silences. And does God exist? Probably not. He's dead out there, right? Which is where all the pathos comes from. But then you watch Face to Face and you reach the ending, which is not where you think it's going to go, where it's almost a false, if you want to believe it, return to a sense of normalcy, where all of this horrifying stuff that Liv Ullmann went through psychologically, so it's not external to people, is brushed off as, it was probably because you were just a little tired, right?
Yeah.
And now, she's going to go back to work. So what I think we've come at the end of this is Bergman, not a perfect filmmaker with his
but
dozens
who
and dozens
is?
of films.
Yeah.
It's the failures that allow to define the great films.
It is wild, though. This is not an interesting observation, but you look at his filmography and a lot of hits there.
Yep,
you know,
a lot of hits.
Pretty good hit rate.
Yep.
You know, check him out if you haven't. So that's Bergman for now. I'm sure we'll return to him in 10 years.
What if we did like 90s Bergman?
I would love to do that.
Because the thing about Ingmar Bergman is that people assume that he finished Fanny Alexander, rolled up and died, which was in the 80s. But he lived till 2009?
I saw his last film when it came out.
Wow.
I was 16 years old, and I went to see Sarah Band at the Camera Bar in Toronto.
The long gap sequel to Scenes from a Marriage.
That's
We're all
right.
waiting for it.
Very heavy-duty stuff for a 16-year-old, I'll tell you that.
Speaking of screenings.
Oh, yeah. So before we get to our letters segment, I do want to plug a really exciting series of events that are being held in the United Kingdom, in London.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Not an unfortunate series of events. A spectacular series of events.
That's right. By London Important Cinema Club correspondent Ben Nash, who has done the heroic work of curating the first Moturn Media film retrospective in the UK.
Whew.
Matt Farley himself is flying out. Well, I don't need to explain who Matt Farley is.
No, you don't.
You know who Matt Farley
Yeah.
is.
Oh, man. Matt Farley is going to have so many good stories about going to England.
And, you know, this is great, isn't it? You
Yep.
know,
Love it.
Moturn has gone international. So Don't Let the River Beast Get You, Local Legends, and Magic Spot will all be playing. Don't Let the River Beast Get You is at the Rio Cinema on April 18th. Local Legends is at the Close Up Film Center on April 19th. And Magic Spot is at the Horse Hospital on April 19th. So, folks, we're going to have...
Wow, the Moturn tour.
We're going to have links in the show notes where you can get your tickets to this. And Ben has also edited a zine featuring new writings from Moturn fans from around the world that you can get there, including a brief article by me, yours truly.
Wow, you had more things to say about Moturn.
Here's the thing. I didn't.
So you're like, let me reach down and pick up the stuff.
I vamped a little, but I had a great time writing for his zine, and he seemed happy with it.
And yeah, he worked really hard on that zine, got a bunch of different contributors. So
It's
go down,
spectacular.
pick it up. Now, I also want to advertise a screening that I will be hosting with Peter Kaplowski. This one is very special in that we will be playing the finally finished cut of Zach Tatham's Space Breakers.
Amazing.
Now, unless you saw the film at What the Film Fest or the one time that I played it during one of my Mind Melters, you have never seen this film because it's never been released. It's really only being released because we have been on Zach's back being like, you need to finish this. It is basically a slacker version of Dark Star about a bunch of teens that are going to a party on a spaceship that was completely built in the sadly departed basement of Queen Video. And it's just them going and doing jokes. You will not forget this film if you see it. It is filled with male nudity, which is always funny.
Va-va-voom.
And that, like, he creates his own language in the film that all the characters are speaking. Everyone who's seen this knows what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it too much. It is so funny when you lock into its wavelength. He has been saying, since we played it, it feels almost a decade ago. Yeah, 2016, almost a decade. He's like, I just need to shoot one or two scenes, then it'll be done. He finally did it, prompted, because it will be playing on April 16th. It's free, 9:15, the Scotiabank Theater. Laser Blast Film Society presents Space Breakers. One of the biggest cinemas in Toronto will be playing this like shot in Queen Video basement movie. I'm very excited. Super jazzed that its big premiere can finally happen.
Incredible news.
Yep. So if you're in Toronto, the director's going to be in attendance with the actors. It will be something you will never forget. You will sit there in the audience watching it, be like, are they allowed to show this at the Scotiabank? Very funny. I hope everybody, again, I just want to emphasize, please go to the website, get tickets, get in there now before there's none left. So, as per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. Our first letter is from Joey. And he goes, Dear Justin and Will, long time, first time. I had to email you because I just finished Jacques Rivette's 13-hour monster of a film, Out One.
Well, he's got one on me. I've never seen Out One.
Here's the thing about Out One. It was made to play on TV. It is a TV series.
So you don't have to watch it all at once.
No, you don't have to watch it all at once. And I think it's just like the novelty of it being so long is what kind of like brought it up in, I think, cinephiles' eyes.
Now, I've seen Jacques Rivette movies. It's, I assume, 13 hours of people walking around Paris.
No.
And doing games to each other.
It's 13 hours of people practicing a play.
Okay.
Yep, that's what it is. And Out One, listen, if you're a J-Ro head like me and Will, Jonathan Rosenbaum, you've read about his writing where it seems like the greatest movie ever that you'll never get a handle on.
Yeah, it looms large.
Yep. And there's movie edits of Out One where people are like, it's drastically different in every version. But the letter writer continues, and sadly, I found it to be the biggest slog I've ever gone through.
Oh.
Nearly unwatchable at times, to the point I was seething in rage at the characters begging them to do something, anything to please make it less boring.
Well, you probably should have stopped watching it then.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I acknowledge the artist's ability required to make such a long movie and have zero interesting things to happen the entire time. I'm hoping either of you have seen it, we have not, and can help me understand the praise or give more ammunition for my hatred. Worth noting, I watched La Belle Noiseuse, which I found enchanting. That's the one about the guy doing a painting of a woman, a Jacques Rivette movie.
Sure. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And Celine and Julie Go Boating, which I found so-so, which I would say is probably one of his most...
like it.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. And one of his most playful, approachable films.
Yeah.
Is there more reason to continue in Rivette's filmography?
Sure. I would say you seem pretty mixed on it.
Yeah. So I would say his movies are very long. There's a lot more you could watch instead.
Yeah.
You don't need to force yourself to watch them.
I would say if Celine and Julie's only so-so for you, though.
You're not going to like the other ones.
Yeah.
No one is going to come knocking down your door and be like, you ever watch Jacques Rivette's filmography? Get him.
I would also say, like, maybe give it a few years. Like, maybe
back.
wait a decade and see if you like him after that.
I'd also like to ask you if you've seen the 4-hour cut of Wenders Until the End of the World. It's my favorite film of all time, and you didn't mention it during your Wenders episode, and I'd love to hear your opinions on it. Here's what I'll say, dear listener. If we don't mention a film during director, we probably haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Have you seen the 4-hour version of Until the End of the World?
So listen, there are some directors we talk about who I love and have seen a lot of. There are others where I've seen all the movies we mentioned. And
you can tell in the episode.
And I'm usually pretty upfront about that.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. It'll start with, these movies were not meant to be watched this way all in a row.
So I've probably seen, like with Wenders, I've probably seen maybe 7 or 8 of them over the years. And there are big numbers that I haven't seen. And I'm working on that. But also him, like his filmography is so hit and miss.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a completionist impulse where it's like, I don't really care about watching The $1 Million Hotel unless you want to do a Patreon episode about it sometime.
Yeah. I mean, that'll really pull people in, $1 Million Hotel. Yeah, it's one I always mean to watch. And then I'm like, 4 hours.
Yeah.
And it's funny because another filmmaker that makes more regular sized movies and then they have a 4-hour, I got to see it.
I mean, it depends on if you like the filmmaker enough.
Yeah, I like Wim Wenders quite a bit.
I like him too, but also like I like his movies, like obviously Wings of Desire, Paris, Texas, you know, these are great films, Kings of the Road. So I like him and I admire him. I guess he hasn't like
connected with you.
Connected with me in the sense that I want to follow him on all of his detours and obsessions.
But I'm, of course, a Sam Neill completist, so I'll have to see this 4-hour post-apocalyptic epic.
Well, we have a lot of life left, hopefully. So hopefully we'll get to
Fingers
it.
crossed.
Yeah.
Our next letter is from Robert, and it's mostly a letter of appreciation, and I know Will loves these, so I'm not going to read it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does he say anything about me specifically?
No, he does not.
Okay.
Just generalities about both of us, and loving the Connor Habib episode. That was amazing.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
He mentions, I have loved both Connor and your podcast for many years. Connor even longer than you all. My apologies. No apologies needed. And so this was a delightful crossover, not to mention one that I never even could have imagined. But it worked so well. But the letter wraps up, greetings from Helsinki, a great city that you should definitely visit sometime. Hey, someone has a film festival, they fly me and Will up. We'd love to visit Helsinki.
Yeah, all expenses paid, please.
Yes, please. The film scene here is small but vibrant. We have 3 great rep cinemas, as well as quite a lot of specific film festivals, including Night Visions, which I do know because they do a lot of genre stuff, which tends to show low-budget, offbeat indie horror and genre films new and old. They've easily become one of my favorite institutions in the city since I moved here. It was Night Visions where I first witnessed a brilliance that is People's Jokers, for example. But thanks a ton for all you do. Oh, well, thank you very much, Robert. And I would love to visit Helsinki. It's very far away.
Yeah.
It'll be very expensive to fly up. But again, the offer's on the table. Me and Will, except maybe the United States at this particular point in time.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the world, Japan, Helsinki, Hong Kong, Spain. I'd like to visit Spain. You're having a genre film festival and you want us to... Will has a new Ed book.
Ed Wood.
I like to call him Ed Book, but yes.
I have a new Ed Wood book coming out, by the way. Please pre-order.
Available for pre-order now.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you need Will to talk to Ed Wood, he's talked to me personally, so whatever he says now, don't put it on the record. He will not go anywhere unless I'm there with him. So...
Yeah. I would love. Listen, I would love it. I would love you to come with me. We could do our little Abbott and Costello act
about Ed Wood.
You're thanked in the acknowledgments, by the way.
Oh well, thank you very much, Will. I better. Well, I get my own page, right? To Justin, this wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
Will seems to be lying right now.
My next book is a biography of you.
Thank you.
Warts and all.
And then Justin worked at a call center for 2 years. It was not good. Do you ever think about that, Will? You're like, if someone wrote a biography of my life, that would be pretty boring at this point.
Well, the thing is, like, unless you're really, really famous and hung out with only famous people, it's like most people probably don't want to know about, like...
Are you getting to the point, though? Will there be a flip that is switching your brain and you go, people want an autobiography from me? Because every critic, they stand at that chasm at one point.
There are too many critics who have written autobiographies. And,
I agree.
And to that, I would say, name your price, publishers.
So a publisher no publisher has ever approached a critic and said, we will pay you to write.
Well, maybe Roger Ebert, they did.
Who's that guy that they were like, he wrote a book about, like, what is criticism?
Oh, was that A.O. Scott?
Someone like that, yeah.
At least that's about criticism.
Yeah, it's not
like Owen
But is
Gleiberman's.
it really about him as well?
Yeah.
Because at the end, it's the universal is only reflected in the personal. And no one can see. Every time I've made a pronouncement on this episode, I've put my hand up and been like, I'm saying something serious.
I remember I actually read probably about 30 pages of that A.O. Scott book,
Me too.
Better Living Through Criticism, and I remember thinking, like, okay, like,
Yep.
you're telling me criticism is subjective? Oh, wow.
Doesn't it start like, let me start at the beginning. The dictionary defines criticism
it's so much like that. By the way, I'm
glad we can roast A.O. Scott. We don't need to make any enemies, Will.
I'm trying not to badmouth people on podcasts anymore because, like, now we're at a point where they'll hear it.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
A.O. Scott, I've read a lot of... Was he an AV Club guy or was he...
No, he was New York Times.
Oh, yeah, so I don't think I was reading any of his criticism.
Maybe you saw him on Ebert and Roper.
Yeah, that's right. I was reading A.O. Scott's criticism when I was opening the webpage on New York Times, hitting escape as quickly as I could to be able to read the article, and then maybe going to archive.org and being
Paywall
like,
bypass.
is it in the Wayback Machine?
Yeah.
All right, so thank you very much for that letter. If you want to send us letters, you can do it at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. On our Patreon this week, Will, they've been waiting for it.
Oh, man.
Anytime I say that, people need to be like, oh, a joke is coming.
I'm so excited for this. We're talking about a movie that we wanted to watch that has one log on Letterboxd.
Not a review. Just a log.
Just a log from an account that I don't even think is real.
No.
Now, we are going to be logs 2 and 3.
Yes.
So by the time you get there
will be a review of this movie up, which is Chu Yang-pin's The Clown.
So yeah, you remember a few months ago we did an episode on Chu Yan-ping, the Taiwanese schlockmeister who made Fantasy Mission Force. Well, we found, thanks to...
we didn't found. We were given.
We were given, thanks to an unnamed source who had access to a VHS rip of the movie, which may be all that exists anymore. His legendary first film featuring a comedian who was known as the Taiwanese Charlie Chaplin, who... This movie was a huge hit in Taiwan, and then he was basically made a slave of the triads and worked to death.
Yeah, and he died when he was 34 years old.
Yeah, and that's actually true.
And this is the film that made Chu Yang-ping's career, that forced him into that indentured servitude, making movies against his will, to the point that he doesn't even remember making most of them.
So my pitch for this movie, which you have not seen.
No.
I guarantee, truly, you have not seen this movie.
Unless maybe you're in Taiwan.
If you're in Taiwan, maybe you saw this movie.
Yes.
My pitch is, we're watching like a Charlie Chaplin ripoff movie from Taiwan from 1980. What does that look like?
And it was a massive hit,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So, like, what is a film that has no reviews on Letterboxd. None.
Yeah.
So, like, it was maybe a hit then. It didn't really travel anywhere. But we're sitting down. We're watching this electricity in a bottle. Will's smiling when I'm saying this.
And this is what's going to take us to the next level. And
no one's talking about Xu Jinping's The Clown.
well, we're getting in on the ground floor because
Clown Fever?
insiders are saying that this movie is going to win the next blank check bracket.
Yes, Xu Jinping.
Yeah, it's going to beat like David Cronenberg or whatever to win the bracket. And that's,
Oh no! David Fincher knocked out Mike Lee, and then he face to face Xu Jinping, and Xu Jinping came out on top.
Yeah.
Listen, I like Blank Check.
Yeah.
And they do episodes about their March Madness bracket, and you can hear the like, yeah, we know. Like, there's nothing we can do about this.
It's Usman Samban versus Quentin Tarantino. Ba, 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 bum, bum, ba, 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 ba. Anyway, sorry, no shade to them. Yeah. They're good guys.
Someone made a bracket of marathon movies we could do, and I'm like, ugh, like looking at all the choices. Because it's like, Alien versus Predator, whoever wins, we lose.
Yeah.
So check that out, patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club. So next week, I'm ready to laugh, Will.
Yeah, it's time to have some fun. We are doing live comedy performance films. Mm-hmm. And that is, for the most part, movies that, live stand-up or sketch comedy shows that were theatrically distributed in theaters, by which I mean Eddie Murphy Raw.
Yeah.
Monty Python Live at the Hollywood Bowl. Dice Rules.
A huge movie. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. A 0-star Roger Ebert classic.
Now, the last one that we're going to talk about, was it released theatrically?
I don't think so.
But it was huge.
This is HBO. And I also think it's important because it's film adjacent and it gives us an opportunity to revisit a subject that we have talked about and
have been criticized about.
Some people have not liked our take.
Yes. Which is, we love the man, and we thought that there were quite many misfires in his career. That's right, Robin Williams.
So are we going to talk about Robin Williams live on Broadway from 2002?
Yep, that's the DVD I had, and I watched it over and over till I had tears in my eyes.
I also saw it when I was a young man and thought it was very funny. Have not seen it since.
This is getting too big a subject, but like, if I wanted to talk about live stand-up, maybe it's too much of an outlier, but did you watch the Safdie directed Adam Sandler?
Adam Sandler, yeah. I loved both of them.
Yeah.
I thought they were great. Now, we're kind of going, Robin Williams aside, we're going for a specific thing where
it's like theatrical.
Things that were released as movies.
Yes.
And I actually think the Sandler ones might qualify just because they were sort of conceived cinematically in some way, but it's a very thin line.
Yeah, and here's what we'll say about them. They're good.
Yeah,
like, that's it.
They're good.
There, you got to take on it before people start asking us about it. But man, have you seen the Dice Man ones?
No.
I've
heard
Nathan Raven's review of it. It's so funny.
Oh, yeah?
In his Euroflops. Yeah.
I mean, I am a fan of his album, The Day the Laughter Died.
Yes. We've talked about that many a times early on in the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what we do. We're doing that. Our Patreon next week, The Day the Laughter Died.
Oh, yes,
We're
please.
talking about it.
Who needs movies? Let's do it.
It doesn't matter. We make up our own rules. Like, it's a movie of the mind, if you will. What is The Day the Laughter Died for people who don't know?
It's an album that he recorded at the very height of his popularity on, I think, Christmas Eve. He went to some shitty comedy club and just abused the audience. Mm-hmm. And Rick Rubin produced it. And it's no jokes. It's just him on stage saying like, hey, you're there with your daughter. You're looking at your daughter. You're seeing her beautiful ass. Don't you want to fuck your daughter?
I think it was a double album, too.
Yeah, it's just that. And he's just doing it until everybody walks out. It's this like self-abasement ritual.
I hear that Dice Rules is kind of like a Mondo movie, like watching it. Yeah. So I'm very excited to check that out. So that's what we're doing next week. I want to say theatrically released stand-up specials, but that's not really what it is. It's like for
the most part, they are.
They are. It's like cinematic stand-up specials. There you go. That's what we'll call it. So until next week, my name's Justin Decloux.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. As per usual, I would like to thank some of our new patrons, who include Norm Munaz, Joey Wolfson, Kenny Jones, Justin Wolfhope, Craig, Sydney Cruz, Chris Berry Ghost, Problem Child 2 on DVD, Alex Sinesi, and Giallo Zilla. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We could not keep doing this without you.
Well, we had a great screening at the Fox Theatre in Toronto last week.
Yep.
As you know, if you listen to this podcast, we have a screening series that we do every 2 or 3 months. We show, a movie that we like.
Whenever they don't shut the door fast enough and we like stick our foot in and we're like, hey, can we do another one, please?
And we're just successful enough to keep going.
Yep.
And you know what it is with rep theaters. Like, they can make $1 trillion just showing whatever's new.
Oh, yeah. What were they playing? They were playing
No Other Land.
which is good.
Yes.
And probably, I don't know, something that stars Tim Roth that you've never heard of.
Or they can play Phantom of the Paradise or something and just sell out.
They're like, oh, that blackface Pierce Brosnan Merchant Ivory produced movie's back on. Put it on for 3 weeks. We'll make our money back.
And we picked Virana by the Ramsey brothers, the Bollywood kings of horror.
We've done an episode on them where we go into detail of their career. We talk about a bunch of their films. I don't think we talked about Virana because I hadn't logged it on Letterboxd.
I had logged it on Letterboxd.
Okay, so maybe we did talk about it.
Well, I guess I might have seen it. I don't know. But the thing is, when we picked Virana, like, I knew it was good, but these movies all blur together for me.
Yes, me too.
So I wasn't 100% sure what was in this one.
Yes. So,
And also, if you listen to that Ramsey Brothers episode, like, I was watching those movies just at home, like it on my laptop. When you see them in a theater, it's a whole other experience.
So we programmed this film, and in the back of my mind, I wondered, like, will there be anyone from the Indian diaspora that's going to show up, or will it just be, white guys?
Yeah. And I was a little concerned too, because the movie's so long, they put it on at 9:00 so that they could fit in 2 movies at night. So I thought, people gonna trek out to the beaches for 9:00. And thankfully we were really saved by the Indian diaspora, because they came out in force.
One group, I will say, only based on the age range of them all, I'll say a family.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like that. Just like a dozen people showed up right at the last minute, sat down. Now, we've talked a little bit about, because we've gone to the Albion Cinema, like the Indian film experience, very involved in what's going on.
Very communal.
Yes. Saying jokes, being loud. And when we were at the Albion, like, the way that you get through it is they play the volume so loud.
That's right.
That you're blasted in your seat and you can't hear anything around you.
Well, this family in the back row, they were very loud through the movie.
Yeah, we can't confirm or deny if it was a family, but it felt like it.
And I think everybody in the room got on the same page very quickly, which was
they were there to enjoy the movie.
Yeah. And it made it more fun.
There is a whistle that I've only ever heard at Indian cinemas, and when they arrived, they started to like warm up their whistle.
That's
to
right.
be like, all right, let's get this ready when we go. I thought it was a blast, and yet, like you said, once people realize they're like, oh, they're here to enjoy the movie, we cannot go up and be like, hey, can you be quiet so we can enjoy this
That's
film?
right. And they only enhanced it for me. And Virana, which is also very loud too.
Yes.
It's like it's being
nonstop music.
You're just being assaulted with fun for 2 hours. So much fun stuff in this movie. And we were also told by some of our Indian audience members after, like, people came up to us and said, oh, I saw this movie 50 times when I was a kid.
Yeah, there was one woman who's like, this is a genuine surreal experience to see it in a movie theater.
Because they saw it on VHS so much, which was interesting to me because I didn't know if the Ramseys had been forgotten, basically. Like, I was glad that people had fond memories of them.
And I have to emphasize again, pure entertainment from end to end. Just the colors. You're in like weird caves with giant statues, spider webs, bava lighting.
There's a musical sequence in this movie.
It killed.
So funny.
Yeah, the audience was dying laughing as it was going on.
There was just a great feeling in the room, I thought, you know?
Which is, I want to emphasize, if you get an opportunity to play more Indian films, do it. Because the audiences oftentimes will show up because nobody else is doing them in these English language circles.
That's right. And I mean, if you're a rep cinema programmer, you may be reluctant because, well, frankly, you don't see a lot of Indian people out at your movies, and you may not know how to like reach them, which is no reason not to show them. The other thing is the movies are long, so they can be a programming challenge.
And it's also like providing the context of it may not have structurally the same thing that you expect. But listen, if you're just getting into this, there's enough movies out there that are like the solid gold classics that you can figure out, program, and you'll be surprised if you make it even a regular thing, more audiences will show up. There's something in Indian cinemas that's been happening fairly regularly where they do 4K remasters, AI upscaling, and they put the movies back in theaters and people show up in droves. So there is a market for those retro films to play in theaters again, and I hope that some rep cinemas will step up and be able to do it. I think another issue is distribution-wise of who owns the rights. It's sometimes very complicated. Indian distribution companies often like the four-wall theaters instead of like leasing them out.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was AGFA that had the rights to it.
So it was very easy for us to get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that may be a little bit more difficult, but hey, these Ramsey brothers, they're all available to rent from AGFA if you own a rep cinema. So
And yeah, this one, Virana, is probably the one. If you want one,
kills.
do this one.